What has happened, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review Jurassic World Rebirth, which I saw last night at a midnight screening, but the movie was directed by Gareth Edwards and stars Scarlett Johansson, Mahershala Ali, and Jonathan Bailey. And I won't bury my opinion behind a 10-minute preamble. I fucking hate these movies apart from the first. I love the first. I've seen the first one many times, but I think it's just further evidence of just how strong a filmmaker Steven Spielberg is, that all these sequels can't even begin to measure up to a movie which I don't even regard as top-tier Steven Spielberg. For me, top-tier Steven Spielberg is like Jaws or Close Encounters of the Third Kind or Raiders of the Lost Ark. But these Jurassic World movies are just total abominations, and it seems like the dumber they get, the better they perform. However, there's been a strange trend as of late. Over the course of the 3 Jurassic World movies, I noticed that the global box office was dropping by $300 million per movie. And I think that's totally fair because Jurassic World Dominion, I think it's a strong contender for the dumbest movie ever to gross $1 billion. And that's easily the worst of the franchise. So I'll say this. Jurassic World Rebirth is better than Jurassic World Dominion. And it's better than Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Fallen Kingdom was so lousy, I was determined not to watch any of these movies in the theater anymore. And then for whatever reason, I'm just a glutton for punishment. I watched Dominion, the extended version, a couple weeks ago to get ready for Rebirth, in a naive hope that somehow Jurassic World Rebirth might be not a return to form, but at least an enjoyable movie-going experience. But here's a question. Do people like the ridiculous idiocy of movies like Dominion? Is Rebirth going to be perhaps a better movie but perform worse because it's just a little bit more bland and kind of devoid of emotion and devoid of thrills? Who knows? But I guess when these movies come out, everybody just kind of gets into a competition over what is the most creative way that they can kind of throw shade on the movies. Let's start with a few positives. I like the 3 leads, Scarlett Johansson, Mahershala Ali, and Jonathan Bailey. We've seen them do better work in other movies, and I feel like they were good performers in search of a better movie. Mahershala Ali is still waiting for Marvel to queue up that fucking Blade movie. That will never happen, but I was thrilled to see him in action in Jurassic World Rebirth, and I feel like he does a good job with the material that is given to him. But what's bizarre is how this movie was written by David Koepp. David Koepp's a legendary screenwriter, but he's written as many legendary movies as he has total turkeys. For every movie in his repertoire, like Carlito's Way, he's got movies like Indiana Jones and The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Like a true industry veteran who's been writing hit movies and classic movies and absolute disasters and bombs for many, many decades. But Gareth Edwards, I think I finally decided that I don't like Gareth Edwards as a filmmaker. When he made Godzilla back in 2014, I was like, this guy's got some chops. Like some of those special effects sequences were done in a really cool, eerie, suggestive way. And Gareth Edwards has a reputation for being able to deliver incredibly gorgeous special effects at a fraction of the cost. He comes from the world of special effects, and he knows what he's doing. And he obviously was one of the directors on Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. Sorry, I had to do a quick fact check to myself. And it was Tony Gilroy who replaced Gareth Edwards to finish the final cut of Rogue One. And then Gareth Edwards also had The Creator, which I thought was one of the most boring science fiction films of the last 10 years. I know it has its fans. I thought it was a pretty lifeless movie. And Jurassic World Rebirth is a pretty lifeless movie. There are a few good action sequences, and there are a few good, very spectacular, thrilling kill sequences. In particular, the very first scene of the movie, I think, is by far the strongest that the movie has to offer. But where the movie fails is with the beating heart, the characters, the humor, the big dramatic moments, all the scenes that were absolute home runs in Steven Spielberg's original Jurassic Park based on the book by Michael Crichton, where just the Spielberg magic was undiminished. But I think it's amazing how Steven Spielberg, when he's at his second tier best, is still light years better than Gareth Edwards or was it Colin Trevorrow, who did 2 of the Jurassic World movies. Yeah, I'm seeing here that he did Jurassic World and Jurassic World Dominion, but Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom was directed by J.A. Bayona. In any case, none of these directors, including Gareth Edwards, can hold a candle to Steven Spielberg. But as I was watching the movie last night, I was in awe of the fact that every time they drop that iconic score from the original movie, you can tell they're going for that big, heartwarming, soaring emotion that was so ever-present throughout that first movie. And it just doesn't work. The whole thing just falls flat. The characters are kind of bland. The characters are kind kind of unlikable. And I feel like there needs to be a new rule in the Jurassic World franchise. Every time you write a ridiculous character, an unlikable character, a stupid character who's either irritating to the audience or constantly making stupid decisions, they must be devoured in painful, agonizing fashion by a dinosaur. One of my biggest complaints about Jurassic World back in, 2015, is that the two most obnoxious kids that have ever been in a Hollywood movie survive. I was like, these kids are brats. These kids are annoying. Let them get torn apart by pterodactyls like that poor girl toward the end of Jurassic World. A scene that had people cheering. I was like, no, y'all should be cheering for these little boys to die screaming. And Jurassic World Rebirth has its fair share of annoying characters that should not even be in the movie, which ultimately serves a purpose of kind of dividing the movie into parallel journeys where you're following one group or you're following the other group. So maybe I should just get into the basics of the plot before I continue with my rant. So here's the very lengthy premise from Wikipedia. 5 years after the events of Jurassic World Dominion, Earth's environment has largely proven inhospitable to the remaining populations of dinosaurs and other de-extinct prehistoric animals. The surviving creatures now reside in remote tropical locales reminiscent of the environments where they once flourished. Zora Bennett, a covert operative, is recruited by Parker Genetics, a pharmaceutical company, to collaborate with paleontologist Dr. Henry Loomis and team leader Duncan Kincaid on a top-secret mission. They infiltrate Isle St. Hubert, if I'm saying that correctly, a forbidden island in the Atlantic Ocean, once used by InGen as a dinosaur research facility. The team's objective is to locate the 3 largest remaining prehistoric species from land, sea, and air. The biomaterials of these creatures hold the key to a revolutionary drug capable of saving countless human lives. Along the way, the team encounters a shipwrecked civilian family, and both groups find themselves stranded. They discover that the island is home to mutated, failed dinosaur experiments that have thrived in isolation for decades. Among them is the Distortus Rex, a deformed mutant Tyrannosaurus Rex with 6 limbs. And getting back to what I was saying about useless characters, the shipwrecked civilian family at the core of this movie, if you were to remove them from the movie, fundamentally the entire plot would remain unaltered, and any character that has absolutely zero impact on the plot and a big popcorn kind of escapist movie, they probably don't need to be in the movie, and they're just wasting time and they're wasting space, and they're increasing the already long running time to 133 minutes, which felt considerably longer. But I want to talk a little bit about the evil pharmaceutical company at the core of this movie, because this movie has an absolutely loathsome habit of lecturing the audience repeatedly throughout the entire running time of the movie about how this pharmaceutical company, they're totally evil, and how all these scientific breakthroughs that they're searching for with these biomaterials, they're going to be basically reserved for a select few, whereas science should belong to everybody, as Jonathan Bailey's character keeps saying. And over the course of the movie, you have all these mercenaries who have money problems, who need the money for their boats or for their expenses or whatever, who are debating, should we be looking for these biomaterials for the betterment of all mankind or for our bank accounts? And that's fine. That's a totally justifiable and a moral dilemma to be at the core of a big popcorn movie. But it's the incessant lecturing over the course of the movie. And I'm like, you know what? I call your bluff, because Universal is part of NBC Universal, which is a subsidiary of Comcast, and I'm so fucking sick and tired of big, giant, soulless corporations trying to pretend as if they're pillars of, like, moral virtue. But if Universal wants to play this game and pretend like their shit doesn't stink, well then, release this movie for free. You'll spend a couple $100 million on it, I'm sure. But if that's your message, that these products should belong to everybody, not just to the select few who can afford to go see it in IMAX, well then, release the movie for free and see how far that gets you as a studio. And I just find it so hypocritical and so annoying when somebody's indulging in capitalism, investing hundreds of millions of dollars into a movie for which they are selling tickets, and then delivering an anti-capitalist message. It just makes you seem stupid and ridiculous and annoying. And once again, small doses, we totally can accept it from Hollywood. But it was the relentless preachiness of the movie that just had me rolling my eyeballs back in my head. And I was like, all right, I get it. Let's move on. Please find a way to kill all these annoying characters in the most painful way possible so we can move on with our lives and go home. It's like 3 a.m. In any case, there's another aspect of this movie where they're talking about the dangers of creating these mutant hybrid dinosaurs, because in the context of this new movie, people have gotten tired of dinosaurs. And I can totally relate. I am fucking tired of dinosaurs as well. As a little kid, there's nothing more exciting than opening up like a children's book and looking at all the dinosaurs. These Jurassic World movies have been so stupid, they've managed to make the most exciting thing in the history of our planet boring. So I get why characters in the context of Jurassic World are tired of dinosaurs. So in order to try to make them exciting again, these scientists are creating these crazy mutant hybrids where they have multiple arms and deformed heads. and that sort of thing. And I was like, you know what? This movie's also preaching against the kind of unbridled greed of creating these hybrids, which are like kind of abominations of nature. I was like, that's very similar to a lot of these blockbuster movies that get made by people like Universal or Warner Brothers or Disney or Paramount or whomever, where they'll take something like Jurassic Park, which is fantastic, great book, great movie, huge hit, everybody loves it, and they'll create these horrible mutant hybrids where they just won't let it die, and they're like, all right, well, the audience is getting tired of it, we got to make them increasingly deformed to try to get them excited. And it's like, are the people who are making this movie not listening to their own message or just willfully oblivious of their own message, or are they just that blind to their own hypocrisy? In any case, these are all things that I was thinking about as I was enduring this movie in the wee hours of this morning. But as I pontificated about the preachiness of this movie, I'm running the risk of coming across as preachy myself, so let's talk about a few good qualities for this movie. I have a deep and intense fear of large creatures underwater. I don't know how it first got into my system, but it is a real thing. And so anytime I see anything involving sea monsters, especially monsters that do not exist, they have a disproportionate impact on me. And there's one big battle scene out in the ocean, which was pretty exciting, pretty thrilling. And to be fair, when the movie decides to kill somebody, they usually die in pretty spectacular fashion. But as I was thinking about Steven Spielberg and Jurassic Park, naturally my brain went to Jaws, and I recently did a 50th anniversary video celebrating Jaws, which I'll plug down in the description below. But in that movie, oftentimes due to the fact that the special effects would not work, you just had guys in a fishing boat chasing barrels because that was a great substitute for a shark machine that was not functioning on that given day of the shoot. And those scenes are so much more thrilling and so much more exciting and so much more immersive and intense because you're really there, versus a movie like Jurassic World Rebirth where they're chasing this 300-foot like Leviathan, which is, spectacularly rendered with all the latest special effects, and yet it doesn't have even 1/100th of the thrills of a couple guys in a boat chasing barrels. So how blockbusters have fallen over the last 50 years. And here we are 50 years later, and Jaws is still a better blockbuster than any blockbuster you can expect to see from most studios today. But as I alluded to earlier, where this movie really fails is with the human moments, like just a genuine tender moment between two characters where they try to share a chuckle over something silly, just totally falls flat. Or even worse are the moments where the movie's trying to communicate a sense of awe and wonder, where you'll have ScarJo or Jonathan Bailey, staring wistfully up at some giant Leviathan that obviously is not there, and just the emotion is just completely, totally empty. This is an empty spectacle. This is empty calories. And admittedly, people like empty calories. People like buying potato chips. People like eating junk food. This is pure junk food. And if you think this kind of junk food is delicious, by all means, go check it out. Like in my crowd last night, there were a lot of parents with little kids, summer break, kids don't have school. And so I was like, God damn, like these 6-year-old kids are going to a midnight movie? That's pretty cool. Like I might be hating this movie. I might hate this franchise apart from Jurassic Park. But at least these kids are having some of their early midnight movie experiences. And those kinds of experiences, even at the movie subpar, does lead to kids developing a fascination with movies because they can brag to their friends and they say, oh my God, I went to a midnight movie last night and these dinosaurs were chopping people up, and everybody gets jealous. And anyway, that's what movies are all about. Clearly there's a massive global audience that loves these movies, otherwise they wouldn't keep performing so well. Even though the franchise is diminishing in popularity, they're still historically been making $1 billion. I don't know if this new one will make $1 billion, but I've been so dead wrong about the appeal of the previous ones. At this point, I no longer have an opinion about the Jurassic World franchise because I'm completely, utterly detached. I can't even look at it objectively. I can only look at it with, blind hatred. And the reason I feel such blind hatred is that it's just yet another example of a really cool, original, entertaining concept that people love and adore decades later and just being run into the ground many times over. I saw this absolutely hilarious tweet yesterday that went a little bit viral, where the original tweet, someone was talking about how it's the worst Jurassic Park movie, yada, yada, yada. And then somebody added on top of it, this will be the 6th time we have created the worst Jurassic Park sequel, and we've become exceedingly efficient at it. And this is when the internet just absolutely shines, where you can take a meme from the Matrix Reloaded and use it to offer some withering criticism toward the Jurassic World franchise. But this is one of those movies that was very clearly made just to satisfy the needs of a big release date. The big July 4th week. It's obviously one of the biggest weekends of the year when it comes to movies. I mean, I would have preferred to have seen Superman, but I'll be seeing Superman on Tuesday. Maybe I would have even... It's funny, Fantastic Four First Steps, I'm expecting to dislike it for a lot of reasons, but I probably would have preferred to have seen Fantastic Four First Steps over Jurassic World. I just really loathe and despise these movies. And once again, I'm just in a state of awe that you could take dinosaurs, like real deal, like mythical dragons that once dominated the earth, and they found a way to make them utterly boring, utterly unoriginal, utterly unexciting. The most exciting part of last night, obviously, now that I think about it, was just seeing this like 55-second teaser for the Odyssey, Christopher Nolan's big Greek mythology epic coming out next summer. I've got the Odyssey right here, and I strongly recommend that everybody read the Odyssey before seeing the movie. It's very readable all these thousands of years later, and the translation I have right here is by Robert Fagles. There are newer interpretations or translations that kind of shave all the rough edges off. I'm like, no, when I read Greek mythology, I want the rough edges. I want, tales of high adventure from a point of view from thousands of years ago. I don't need sensitivity readers to make it safe for me to read the Odyssey. In any case, from what I saw, it looks like it's going to be pretty cool, man. All I saw was Bernthal and Tom Holland and a shot of Damon floating at sea. But Nolan, I feel like if there's any director alive right now who has a chance of giving us a big, bold version of the Odyssey, obviously Christopher Nolan, he's the guy. So I didn't go to the movies just to see the teaser like a lot of people did, but it was a welcome relief from 30 minutes of trailers and commercials. Then they showed the 1 minute teaser. Then they showed the movie. But it was definitely the peak of the evening. So I guess just as a way of wrapping up this video, I'll say that Jurassic World Rebirth is yet another example of one of those movies where it feels and tastes and looks like leftovers that are found at the back of the refrigerator that have been there for months that are growing moss. You're like, maybe it's still good. And you put it in the microwave and you're kind of eating it without pleasure. That is Jurassic World Rebirth. And over the last decade, we have seen so many classic IPs and franchises and series just absolutely run into the ground and destroyed. Like, name a franchise that's in better shape now than it was 10 years ago that has been around for more than 10 years. And that's a hard game to play. Like Raiders of the Lost Ark or Indiana Jones, nope. Lord of the Rings, nope. Jurassic World or Jurassic Park, nope. Star Wars, Star Trek, I mean, the list goes on and on. Maybe DC is poised to make a comeback next week, but I'm always just a big believer in new franchises, new IP. Like, if you look behind me, there are a bunch of fantasy and sci-fi books and adventure books and that sort of thing. The shelves of bookstores are breaking under the weight of all the great fantasy series and horror series and sci-fi series that are all screaming to be made into movies. But executives seem to have this idea in their head that, like, the movie-going public can only handle like 7 franchises in their lives, and they just need to remake and repeat those same franchises into extinction. I'm like, all right, you are hastening your own obsolescence, because if you can't give me cool new original stories, well, then I'll look for it in books. I'll look for it in video games. And perhaps I'm being too harsh. Some people might say, dude, chill. It's just another Jurassic World movie. Like, what did you expect? Why did you even go see it? Well, I've got a YouTube channel devoted to movies, and I like covering box office. So I had, a certain level of curiosity, just because when I'm talking about box office, if I can bring myself to see the movie, I like having an informed opinion. But I feel like when you look at Jurassic Park and that novel by Michael Crichton, which I read my freshman year in college, one of my favorite classes ever, Fantasy and Social Values. We read Dune, we read Ender's Game, we read Jurassic Park, we read Left Hand of Darkness, we read all kinds of cool fantasy and sci-fi. It was like one of the best ways to start college humanly possible. But when you think about what Crichton and Spielberg did, that should be getting done or being done. Well, I'm kind of getting lost in my own bad grammar. But every month we should be seeing kick-ass movies based on kick-ass books. And who knows, maybe next year's Project Hail Mary will be an excellent example of that. I saw the trailer last night and I was like, all right, this looks kind of cool. And it's Lord and Miller, who are talented directors. I have not read the book. I've bought the book, and I plan on reading it before, but I've got plenty of time to read that book before the movie comes out next year. But that's an example of take a cool new book that's never been adapted before and turn it into a big-budget movie with 2 of the biggest directors out there. Or who knows, maybe Running Man this fall. Obviously, the original Arnold Schwarzenegger Running Man was a very, very loose adaptation of the Stephen King, Richard Bachman book, but I'll also be reading The Running Man before I see Edgar Wright's new movie this fall. So some filmmakers are trying to adapt cool science fiction, but I just feel like Jurassic Park and Jurassic World deserves much better than flat, bland leftovers reheated from the back of the refrigerator. But with all that negativity aside, I'm sure it's still going to make piles of money. The question now is just, how much money will it make? When will one of these movies finally fucking fail? And on that day, I will rent out a bar in New York, and I'll have a little cocktail party with cigars for everybody out there who despises all the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World movies apart from the original. We will raise a glass to the demise of one of the most lifeless franchises in the entire movie biz. So on that note, I'm going to wrap this sucker up. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And I look forward to talking about Super Duper Man early next week. But I hope everybody has a great July 4th, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.